Lake, and this is the Spasyk family, all our great aunts and uncles, and we are going to talk about the family a little bit. We're going to start with...
Well, as much as I can remember, but I want you to break in because I'm not sure that any of us really got as much information as we would like to have had about the origins of our family in the Ukraine. I know that Pop was born in 1889, according to the headstone at cemetery, which I checked out just yesterday. And that Mom was born in 1891, 2 years later. So my understanding was that he was about 16, and then she must have been about 14 when they came to this country. My understanding again was that they did not know each other before they met on the boat. Okay. Now,
louder, please.
Exactly where they came from in the Ukraine, I'm not certain of that either. I remember names like Eastern Galicia. Okay, I remember the Dnieper and Dniester River. They flow down by Kiev. I'm not even certain under what country the Ukraine was dominated by at the time they came over, because the Ukraine has had in its, I don't know, 1,000-year history, they've had very little period of independence.
Right.
Again, my understanding is that Austria, they were part of Austria at the time Mom and Pop came over here. I really need to do a lot more research on that as to what the history of the Ukraine was.
Did they come over together?
Yes, my understanding was that they met on the boat.
They met on the boat?
Right, and Mom's mother, whom we call Baba, our grandmother, was with her. And Pop was by himself.
Yeah, I don't know whether Uncle Mike came with them or not. His brother, his brother Mike, who was the father of Mickey and Walt and Bill.
That I'm not sure of either.
I don't know if they came together, but I think it was a group of maybe young men that came together.
See,
with Pops?
With Pops, yeah.
See, what's lost in the story is how in the world these two young kids with one of their mothers traveled from the Ukraine to France, where they got on the boat. We don't really know this. Do you have any memory of how they did?
They came over because of Pop's uncle. Remember, he was a Spasyk.
Mary, can you talk louder, please? I know it's probably hard,
I
but...
forget what his name was. He was Spasyk.
I don't know whether it was Theodore.
And he was the one that had Pops and Uncle Mike come over. I mean, he sponsored them to come over. I mean, that's why they came. They didn't come to Pittsfield because they just picked it. They came because Pop's uncle was here.
Oh, so he had family over here in Pittsfield. Does anybody know why
Why Mom?
Yeah, why your mom picked this area?
My understanding that there was a lot of religious persecution of Ukrainians, and particularly of Catholics, by the Russian Bolsheviks at the time. I remember one story that Mom used to tell about seeing her younger brothers, or her brothers, whether they were younger or not, I don't know, killed in their front yard. Do you remember?
Oh, really?
Yes.
Her own brothers?
Right.
Wait a minute now.
What would have been your
Mom didn't
uncle?
come alone then, because didn't
Uncle Joe.
Uncle Joe?
Uncle Joe
It was
came.
Uncle Joe, who was Joe Dennis. He must have been with them. Now he must have been almost a baby boy, because he was a lot younger than Mother.
Are you sure he wasn't born here?
No, he wasn't
no,
born here.
Joe wasn't.
Because,
No,
So that
because
was Mom's.
So I don't know. He must have came over with them.
oh Well, he had to
Yeah.
come over
Right, because he was the youngest one.
yeah,
Joe
yeah,
was.
that's right.
Right.
Because Graham was a widow already.
Yeah.
Graham was a widow when
Okay,
she-
that I didn't know either.
Yeah.
I know that Pop's mother and father were still alive, weren't they?
No, his mother was dead because she died with there was like I don't know influenza or something. It was an epidemic. So his mother and a couple of sisters and brothers died. I think they were sisters. I don't think she had. As far as I know, I think his only brother was Uncle Mike, and he came over here. But he had sisters over there because he had a sister named Nellie that I know.
A sister named Mary.
And a sister named Mary.
Is that why you guys are named Mary?
That's right. Yeah, that's where we got our names from. And what was I lost my train of thought
Okay,
there.
but I remember
We had twin
we were
brothers
living.
when we did.
Oh yeah, well they died with the mother, I think.
I
He
remember
got
when
in that
Pop's father died.
epidemic.
Yes. Now he was about 91 or so when he
Right,
died.
because we were
Yeah,
living
on North Street.
then.
And we had a picture. There was a picture of him taken in his
in his
coffin.
coffin. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a custom, and I think it still is in the old country that they take pictures of the deceased in the
Yeah.
coffin.
Yeah,
It
so that's
always
the
been-
only way we knew. Yeah, that's the only way we knew our grandfather.
I remember being in the upstairs, north bedroom, which was not Pop's bedroom,
Yeah.
and Pop's had this picture of his father. It's the only time I ever saw Pop's cry
Oh yeah.
in my life. It was because he was such a strong person. Never showed any emotion.
And, yeah.
If he was sick, he didn't know it. I never knew
He
him to
never
have a
knew
sick
he'd
day
be
in his
sick,
life.
Never knew he'd be sick.
But at any rate, so it had to be about 1904 when they came to this country.
Yeah.
1904. Yeah.
Louder.
Yeah, you've got to just talk a little bit louder because I don't want it to be drowned out.
Yeah.
So basically, Uncle George, there was your mom and her mom, which was your grandmother,
Yeah.
and your dad was also on the boat with his brother,
Well,
right?
We think.
We think. Yeah.
Uncle
But
Mike,
because I know his brother lived here.
Well, Uncle Joe, Graham had a son. Mom had a younger brother.
And
he died maybe before your mother was born and everything else, and your mother didn't know Uncle Joe.
Uncle Joe died in
He was 40 years old when he died.
1942.
40 years old.
He was 40 years
Yeah.
old
Well,
when
we
he
just
died.
looked at the
Yeah,
thing
we
was
checked
about
that out
42.
yesterday.
Yeah, he died right after I got married. I got married in 41.
Yeah. Okay. He was 42. Yeah.
They were two.
And I think he was born in 1900.
Yes,
He was
because
born in 19. So if they came over in 1904, then
Yeah,
Uncle Joe was only 4 years old when they came
So
over.
you're-
Yeah.
It's adding up.
See, and so Mom was about 10 years older than Uncle Joe. Yeah, because I know he was quite a bit younger.
Okay, so when did they finally
So they
get together?
I think they, as I understand it, they picked up the boat in Le Havre, in France, and with all these other refugees coming to America.
Yeah.
And that's when I understand the two families got to know each other,
Yeah.
and they were all apparently heading for Pittsfield because they had friends or relatives up in Pittsfield.
What's the chances of that happening?
pretty remote?
Wow.
Yeah. And again, I don't know how long after they got here Mom and Pop got married. Do any of you know?
Well,
Again, the public records would show this, and we need to research this out.
Well, that gives us an idea how they met and things, and then of course along came all of you guys, and there was a total of 8. So, or 9, excuse me, 9. And we're going to start introducing who's with us right now. This is the oldest living member, Peter Spasyk. Uncle Pete, why don't you just say a few words about yourself?
Me?
Sure.
There ain't much I can say about myself.
Oh, I could say a lot about you.
I know you could.
Who did you marry?
Huh?
Who did you marry?
I married a nice little girl from Cohoes, New York.
How'd you meet her?
Meet her? Well, I'll tell you. It's a long story, but
We
we used to go to. We used to take a train out of Pittsfield to go over to New York because we didn't have no car at them days. So we used to walk down to the train station. I think we paid 35 cents to go to Albany by train. We get off in Albany, and from there we took a bus to Troy, and from Troy we had to take another bus into Cohoes for a nickel apiece. That was a lot of money then. Don't forget, that was a lot of money those days. Right. And we used to go down to Ukrainian Hall, which they had dances out there every Sunday.
Who's we, Indian?
We, my brother Steve, Mike Zach, Pete Zach, Frank Petrowski, Mike,
Cousin Mickey or Walt?
no, they were too young for our crowd at that time.
Okay, so all of you good-looking guys got there, and then what
That's how we
happened?
used to go to the dances over in Cohoes, and that's how I met my wife.
And what's your wife's name?
Well, she's baptized as Anna Dinko.
Well, how'd you get the
But we
name
call her
out Butchie? How did that happen?
Well, I don't know how that. One day, I don't know where it started. We started calling Butch. I was supposed to be Butch, and she was supposed to be Butchie. So that's how it started.
So now you're the Spaz and she's Butchie.
That's right. I'm Spaz, and she's Butchie.
How old are you, Uncle Pete?
Well, I hate to say this, but I think I'm 83.
Uncle Pete, I wouldn't mind saying that if I looked that good at 83. Okay, and then how long have you been married?
Well, just a week ago, we've been married 84 years.
84 years?
No, wait a minute. I'm 83. I'm sorry, I was thinking of my age. No, I was married to that.
Does it feel like 84 years?
Nah. I'm 39 and holding by right.
So you've been married 54 years.
54 years.
The best 54 years of your
My
life?
life.
All right.
I agree with you there. I can't argue that.
Where did you work?
Well, I started my first job. I think I was 11 or 12 years old. I worked for a little old lady called Molly Burke.
Oh, yeah.
You remember her, don't you? Right.
In the neighborhood.
I used to go over there early in the morning. That's when they didn't have gas. All we had was coal stoves. So I used to go as a little youngster. I used to go over there, and she'd give me the key to her back door. And she'd say, "You start my fire, shake the coals down, and get me a new fire going before I get out of bed." And I was only 11 or 12 years old at that time. She used to give me 25 cents a week.
And what would that buy you?
Bought me everything. It bought me more than I could get today.
I believe that.
It bought me a lot more than I could get for my money today. Then after we started just the coaling, then she says, "Well, Peter, why don't you clean my house, make my bed for me, I'll give you another 10 cents a week." So that's how I ended up earning 35 cents a week.
Wow.
And that went on for a good many years.
And then where'd you work after that?
Then, well, I was still a youngster going to school. My brother Steve and I, we used to walk up to Smith's Farm, which now is the GAAA. And at 4:30 in the morning, we used to milk 35 cows every morning.
At what time?
4:30 in the morning.
That explains why you're up so early even nowadays.
And we used to milk cows between Steve and I. Before the milking machine came in, Steve and I used to milk those cows every morning.
Now show us how you used to milk them.
Yeah.
And then chariot up to the house, and they had these big vats where they didn't have pasteurized milk. You screens and pour it on the top, let it drip down through an ice where you had ice in the middle of the screen. And you took 40-gallon cans, and then you pick up the 40-gallon cans, you put them in a vat, go out to the ice house, chop off a piece of ice and put it in the bag.
No wonder you had to get up at 4:30 in the morning.
We did that, Steve and I did that for quite a while. And in the summertime, we used to go up there and do all the haying for them. And that's when we got real money, $7.50 a week, plus our meals.
Can I ask him to tell one
Yeah,
other
and then
story about
A
Grandpa?
couple times in the winter time,
Yeah, but we're gonna go
we
through
used to take the horses out, and we used to peddle the milk with horses. Down Bendick Road, all through the Morningside section. That was a good many years ago.
Audrey wants to ask you a question about you and Graham.
No, about the baseball.
No, we're gonna get to that.
That's come later.
Yeah, that's coming.
Hey, that's great.
All right, where did you work the majority of your adult life?
Then I went from there. I worked a few years at the Pittsfield Gas Company, Pittsfield Gas Company, and then from there I went to the General Electric Company, where I spent the next 37 and a half years before I retired.
Great. Okay, next to Uncle Pete is Aunt Mary. Aunt Mary, how old are you? I couldn't believe this when you told me it the other day. 78?
She's just a kid.
Oh, no, you're not 78.
I remember 78 in September.
Well, you're not there you go.
Well, it's almost 78.
I'm not going to say about myself. I mean, just tell about when I'm growing up, because there's nothing much to say about myself. But as a child, of course, there were 5 boys before I was born. And if my husband stops telling me to talk louder, I'll be able to be all right. So I was quite spoiled. I couldn't understand when I was growing up. I couldn't understand why I had to be dressed differently than my brothers. And anytime my mother went shopping or something and brought them back something, they used to get so mad at me because I had to wear them first. Their clothes, no matter what size they were, I had to wear them first. And they always wanted, well, hurry up, put her so she can take a nap or something so I could get my clothes back. But then as I grew older, and of course being the first girl, my mother just always had somebody make my clothes for me and always dressed. And then of course she used to embroider an awful lot of my clothes that I wore. And you can ask your mother and your aunt because they got the hand-me-downs.
Did your 5 brothers protect you?
Very much. It was very hard to get a date because they would always interview everybody first and say, don't forget, you had to answer to me. But the most important thing I remember about, at that time it didn't mean a thing to me, but now as I look back, my brother's house, we lived on the top of a hill and we went to school, got to school, and that was just down the hill. And my brothers had to walk me to school. And every time I used to go to school 5 days a week, and I never wore the same dress twice because my mother was so thrilled to have a girl. And when I'd get down in the fall or something, and my brothers would take me down. It was my brother Stevie and my brother Peter that would walk me to school. They'd get down and they'd meet some of their friends. Look at what she's got on today, So it was quite, At that time I didn't appreciate it like as much as I do now, but.
So what was it like when Aunt Hun came along?
They were younger, and I didn't pay too much attention to my sisters because at that time when we were growing up, we didn't get close until we grew up because they had their friends. I went to St. Joseph High School. They went to the public school, and because I was the first girl, I wasn't allowed to play ball or ride a bike or do any of that things. But my sisters did because they went to a public school and they were, my sister Nellie played tennis and my sister Honey was in sports and I didn't do any of that stuff because at St. Joseph High School, even though we had a basketball team, a girls basketball team, which we played at that time at the Father Matthew place it was called, FMTA. What is it called now? Catholic Youth Center.
Catholic Youth Center.
Catholic Youth Center.
CYC.
And I spent my time over there, and we could be in a Catholic school. The girls weren't allowed to have sports or anything, but we did have a basketball team, but with girls' rules, which.
So Pops didn't let you play on the Spasyk baseball team?
No way.
No?
My sisters Honey and Nellie probably could, but I wasn't I wasn't allowed to do any of that. And of course we had cooking lessons and stuff like that over in the FMTA, just all girls. And of course, when the school I went to, the boys sat on one side, the girls sat on another side.
Really?
And
So you had a standard uniform back then?
no uniforms. We just wore the regular dresses. But there was a few of us girls that, as every school does, you get together and you have certain friends, and we have like a little club that we'd go, after school we'd go over to each other's houses, and we'd have, so it was always right after school, so we always had to be home for dinner, and we just would embroider or knit or do something like that.
What was dinner like at your house with 9 kids?
Chicken every Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
And
homemade
and hamburger, chicken homemade soup, custard pie, apple pie, and all homemade from scratch. My mother.
And don't forget Grandma's donuts every day.
Yeah.
Donuts every day?
Every day Grandma made donuts, and we had the big pot of coffee sitting on the stove every day.
So when my grandmother, when we had this Rose Club, my grandmother would, we always had to wear hats and everything when we went to church or to any of our, after, anything that had to be done with the church, with the school or anything else. So my grandma, and we all sat together, the group of us always sat together at all the football games and basketball games and things. So Grandma crocheted little berets, and
Oh, really?
our colors were purple and gold, so she made every one of us.
Did she really?
My thing, she always used to make the things. And she used to do, of course, I always bragged about how she always made my grandmother made out of paper, fake paper. My grandmother would make the flowers for the Ukrainian church every holiday. And you look at them, you think they were really real, they were so beautiful. And my grandmother always did an awful lot of work at the Ukrainian church. She washed the floors and everything else. And every holiday we washed the altars, and Grandma and my mother would wash the linens and whatnot. So I happened to mention that to one of the nuns. At that time we had nuns, and they wore habits when I went to school, to St. Joseph's
really?
High School. And I happened to mention it one time. So I guess one Easter, I guess they were short of somebody, or some of the nuns got sick or something. So she asked me, I would ask Grandma to do the linens for the church, St. Joseph's Church. So when I came home and told her, she did it. She said, boy, what a job you're giving me, she said.
Right.
That continued for too many years. That they liked the work she did so much, because she would, the linens and white linens, she'd have to starch them and iron them and whatnot. So
That was a big job.
But my sisters and I didn't become very close until after we all got out of school, because, as I say, they went to public schools and they had their friends and I had my friends, and their friends were mostly,
And you were married and are married?
yes, I married Paul Thiele.
We all know that first.
And
Yeah,
right, and you were married to Uncle Alan.
in 1941. I was 24 years old.
24?
Yeah.
Wow.
Everybody thought it was going to be Monet in those days, and because my mother married so early, and then I guess I got married the same year you did, didn't I? I got married the same
year.
because you got married in
41.
in July, and I got married in September. 41.
And Stephanie was
Yeah.
her flower girl.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Stephanie was the flower girl.
Aunt Tuppy was?
Mary's flower girl. I think she was only about
Your mother
3
and
years old.
yeah, your mother and your aunt Stephanie used to come over to Uncle Alan's, and I were married. We lived in New York Avenue, and spend a weekend with us. And one morning, Uncle Alan heard a noise down in the kitchen. They couldn't understand what happened. Your mother and your aunt were spending the weekend with us, because my brother Stevie and your grandmother were going out or something, and they were home kind of late, so they stayed with us. And so Uncle Alan went down to see what the noise was. And there it was, your mother, Paula. He said, what are you doing up so early? She said, well, I'm going to church, she says. I'm not going to sleep the whole day away. So, that's why your mother just always was an early riser. And
She still is.
yes.
Mary,
Okay, and next, oh, go ahead.
Wait a second. You mentioned that when you were growing up, your older brothers were very protective of you, but you remember when you were dating in high school and when you were dating Alan, I was very protective of you.
Well, which brings us along, the second girl, which was actually, what, the 7th, was Aunt Hun.
Yeah.
How old are you, Aunt Hun?
I am now 75.
Wow, you don't look it.
Oh, gee, thanks.
What do you remember about growing up, Aunt Hun?
Well, I remember that I shared a bedroom with my grandmother, with Baba. Yeah. So Nellie and Mary had one bedroom, and I shared my bedroom, Grandma's bedroom. And she taught me how to say my prayers, and they were Ukrainian prayers, the Our Father and the Hail Mary. And of course, she would say it first, and then I would repeat after her. And I could still remember her and me praying together, you know, every night, kneeling down and saying our prayers at night. And so that's how I got, you know, to remember prayers. And I didn't really know how to say the Our Father until we got to school. Because at that time when we were in school, we used to say the Our Father every morning.
Was there a Ukrainian church then, Aunt Hun? Or did...
Well, there was, yeah, because I think the Ukrainian church was built around 1920. But we didn't have a pastor of our own. I mean, he used to commune over to Watervliet at that time. And so, anyway, and also, may I forget to say, we used to go to Ukrainian school. They had, in fact, our professor, they used to call him, was your grandmother's
Last husband.
second husband, Alec Yarmy.
Ah.
And he taught us how to read and write Ukrainian.
He did?
School, yeah. And Mary and I guess we were very, very good because I guess he used to scold us a lot of times. But that was at least, of course, that was the time before we knew your grandmother and stuff like that. But of course, my father knew Alec Yarmy. So I could pick up some letters now, you know, and stuff, and I could still read a little bit, but not very much. But Nellie and them never had any touch of Ukrainian like Mary and I did. And then, let's see, well, we were pretty lucky though, because when we went to Pontusic school, we had five brothers ahead of us, and they were pretty athletic. And in the hallway up in Pontusic school, they had a picture of the baseball team, and of course my brothers had the knickers on, you know, their baseball outfits were the knickers and everything, and that picture hung upstairs on the top of the stairs of Pontusic school right up until, well, probably
They closed the school.
Till they closed the school?
They closed the school.
I don't know if we got
I think we have a picture of that somewhere, and I don't know where it is. I think I had one.
Oh, we gotta find that
I
picture.
gotta find that picture.
Yeah,
You did, because during the war, Doc Greenwood was in it.
Yeah, Doc Greenwood.
And I brought it to work with me one day,
And
and he
Doc-
was so embarrassed. I think he didn't speak to me the rest of the day because there he was in knickers.
Yeah.
I thought he did.
and
Knickers
also
and high cuts.
And also, who was in that picture, one of the pictures anyway, was Father Gregory's father.
Oh, really?
Allison Gregory.
Allison Gregory.
Yeah. Yeah,
Isn't
so,
that
yeah,
something?
yeah.
Maybe he knows where it is.
No, he doesn't, because I sort of
Did you ask him?
that we had a picture, and he thought he'd like to make a copy of it if I ever found it, you know, and stuff.
I
So,
got it down somewhere.
yeah.
I
So
think
we
You
were-
do?
I think
Yep,
you
I
have.
think I have that picture around somewhere.
So because of our brothers, you know, and stuff, like we were well known.
Yeah.
In fact, I know there was when I went to high school, when I graduated from Pontusic and went to Pittsfield High, there was one teacher that was teaching at Pittsfield High that had taught the boys, you know, earlier, and I can remember him talking to my Latin teacher and coming in the room and wanting to see me, because you know how they must have a name a list of people that were coming to the first year high school, you know. And so he came in to see me because he knew my predecessors at the school.
So he came in to check on you?
That was Mr. Geary, Tom Geary. Yeah.
Well, next to Aunt Hun is Aunt Nell. Aunt Nell?
Yeah,
How old are you, Aunt Nell?
I'm 73.
And what do you remember about your childhood?
What I remember most are my mother and father and having all their Ukrainian friends over on Sundays, and they would sit outside and they'd sing songs and they'd in
drink
Ukrainian
hard cider and fresh eggs.
Yeah, and they'd get drunk. And that's what I remember most about, you know. And then and my father putting us in the back of the truck and taking us to where Nancy and Michael John live now. Used to be, belonged to, you know, was what we called our woods, you know, and we used to have our Sunday picnics there. My father would put us in the back of the truck and we'd go out there and spend Sunday afternoon having picnics out there, and then we'd come home about 5 or 6 o'clock at night.
Wasn't there a Ukrainian picnic yard right next to where Winslow's used to live on Pex Road?
That
was later?
That was later, yeah, when we were already grown up, yeah. But as far as being young, I don't remember too much.
Do you, you're married now, right?
Yes, I'm married.
And how long have you been married?
I've been married 18 years.
And who are you married to?
Dominic Cashwell.
Dominic Cacknell, okay. And then the baby of the family, Uncle George.
You don't look like the
How
baby
old are you,
to me,
Uncle
boy.
George?
I turned 72 about 3 days ago.
You're kidding.
72?
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, George.
And
Well,
give us a little history about your life.
well, being the youngest of the clan, having 3 sisters between me and my next older brother, Mickey, I felt a little bit isolated in that respect because I wasn't old enough to do the sports and things that they were into. Incidentally, if you want to know where the golfing tradition in our family came from, it came from Pete and Steve and Johnny, who caddied as I was growing up. And I never did caddy, so I never got into golf. But that golfing tradition passed on at least to Nellie. But I think I was probably spoiled rotten.
You were.
On Sundays, Mom and Bubba would always find out what I wanted in the way of pies and so forth, and they had to take whatever I wanted. All of my favorites were taken care of. I didn't have to worry about hand-me-downs, so everything that I got was new because
The boys were too
the boys were too
Right,
big and I couldn't even look for them. So in that sense, I felt very privileged. In fact, that even carried on in later life because I think it was, I just can't say enough about the sacrifices that my older brothers and sisters made for me, as well as my parents, to send me to college and to give me the advantages that a lot of them really didn't have and sacrificed for me. So I'll be eternally grateful to them for that. But I did have the opportunity to go to the University of Michigan. That's a long, convoluted story that would take up a whole tape because it started with Sam Ashley at GE.
Yeah.
I was too young to go to college when I got out of high school. Yeah. So, I had the opportunity to go to a great university. And then right out of college, I started my professional career, supposedly for 1 year, as a traveling secretary for my fraternity, Lambda Chi Alpha. 40 years later, I retired as the executive vice president of that fraternity. So my whole adult life has been in that one area, but it's been a very rewarding life.
Done very well as the youngest.
Again, I owe it all to my family.
Yeah, but you
Okay.
forgot all that time you spent down at the FMTA too.
Well, that's sure. That really is.
And this time we're going to be telling some family stories, some of our favorite. The first thing that we would like to do, though, is go back to Uncle Pete and have Uncle Pete go through the family and the siblings and who was born first. Uncle Pete, who was born first out of the Spasyks?
My brother Bill was born first, and then he was married to Madeline Kay. Then came along Stephen, and he married Dot Stephanie, and he had two good daughters. One was name was Stephanie, the other name was Paul. And then came Peter.
That's you.
That's me. Well, Peter, what can I say about myself?
Well, how were you born?
Huh?
Where were you born?
Where was I born?
You were-
Pittsfield.
Well,
Mass-
where?
Where? Down, if you're down on Wakona Street, up in back of Shays, which is now Shays Carpet House, up in the back there, up in there, that's where I was born.
Really? Did a doctor help with your birth?
The old Tilson mill house.
And a doctor was there?
Huh?
Was there a doctor there?
No?
I think Grandma.
Grandma
Big one.
brought us all into this world.
Yeah,
There
Grandma.
was no such thing as
George.
a doctor.
Oh,
Never
really?
even heard of a doctor. Them
We heard
days.
you were dropped on your head.
Oh, when I was, this is a story my mother told my wife. When I was born, she was washing dishes in front of the sink, and all of a sudden she says, "Grandma, Peter's here." He just patted on his head. And then my wife always said, now she knows what's wrong.
So, Uncle Pete, you were the third one.
Right, and then my brother John, that's when John came along. He was the big athlete of the family. And he married, come on.
Gene Hall. Gene Hall, a minister.
Jane Hall, yeah, up in Burlington. They went to school together. He met her up in college in University of Vermont. Right. Then his first daughter was Marco. Then he had one of the nicest little Peters you've ever seen.
Oh, he was adorable.
I lost him when he was very young,
At the age of 3.
at the age of 3, and then
What did he die of?
He had
cancer.
Brain.
No, it was the
1947?
Tumor on the head.
Tumor on the head, that's what it
1947?
was, yeah. Huh?
Was it 47?
Yes.
And then Michael Avery came along. Well, of course, Michael, he made it in this world. He went to West Point, and he made the Army's career. Then my brother Mickey came along. And he had one son, Michael John, and he was married to Helen, what was her maiden name?
From Adams.
From Adams?
Yeah.
That's how long ago, I don't remember that.
Geez, it's a good thing you have your sisters to back you up, Spaz.
And then this is then my mother said, man, this has got to stop. Then came Barry. That's when she was happy. Then she had 2 more of them after that. She had Honey, and then she had Nellie. And then at last, who came along? Little George. And he was small, believe me. We never thought he'd even get to be 2 feet high when he was born.
Well, they saved the best for the last.
Yeah.
And
Okay, so
They figured they couldn't improve on that, so they
I'm
stopped.
telling you, we didn't think that George was even going to ever grow up. He kept small all the time. Then all of a sudden, boom, now look at him.
So Uncle Pete, you said that Uncle Bill was the oldest. Who remembers something about Uncle Bill?
Oh, we all do, I imagine, because
Well-
he was really quite a...
George could probably.
Well, Bill was the most religious. of
Yeah,
the-
yeah.
Oh, he was.
More
very-
than Aunt Honey?
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Bill, however, unfortunately,
That's at least...
was born, I think, with a heart problem. And he was always very frail physically.
Yes.
But he was a giant of a man otherwise. If it hadn't been for his health problems, I suspect he probably would have been a priest.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yep, Bill was,
And,
right, yep, he was very religious.
Where do you think he got that religiousness from?
Well, I don't know.
Do you think it was from your grandmother, Aunt Hon?
No, I think it was from my father. Well, my father, I don't think showed it, outwardly, but inwardly, he was a very, very
And
religious
of course,
man.
Pops was very much involved in the Ukrainian church here, helped
yeah.
build the church,
Church and,
hire the priests.
He had very, very high standards as far as the way people should act, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But as frail as Bill was, I can remember he was always doing things for people. He would have a movie camera or a projector, and he would rent these movies and take them out to shut-ins. Sometimes in the middle of a blizzard, he would be
Really?
walking through snow, and as frail as he was.
It was part of the Bobby Kidney
Yes,
Sunshine.
and he started that.
He was
one of those who started
Yeah,
it, probably.
that's right. He was one of the
Bobby's
kidney.
Kidney Sunshine Club, yeah.
Because
Now-
I know
So
a lot
he-
of times in order to carry the equipment, he'd come on, Peter, give me a hand. We'd take off, and we'd go to the homes, nothing but these old shut-ins. And that's where he would go and show his movies. I'd have to set
Wow.
up the screen for him. He had the projector.
And what were
we
they
had a lot
movies of?
fun. Yep. It was good. He enjoyed it like that.
Films that
Oh, films.
that you would rent from,
They rent the film, and then he'd show 'em.
Things
Right.
like musicals, Bill Crosby and Bob Hope and those things.
Now, how much of an age difference was there between you, Uncle George the youngest, and Uncle Bill the oldest?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, were you just a
probably,
small boy when he was almost out of the house?
oh yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So was he like a father to you in some ways?
Oh, I really looked up to
Yeah,
him.
Well, being the oldest boy, and of course of having so many children, and our family was a working family. My mother worked, my grandmother worked, my father worked, and so Bill, unfortunately, was really liked school and everything else. But being the oldest boy, he had to quit school. He could not go to high school.
He had help to work?
He helped to work to support the family. So,
Remember, this was during the Depression now.
Yeah.
Right.
and so he went to work in a woolen mill. But he, I think it's called the LaSalle School. Was it LaSalle? He was, so he did his own studying and his testing and everything else through mail. And finally, when he was ready to get his degree or something from school, St. Joseph's granted him a diploma in high school, saying that, he was the equivalent of a graduate of high school, but he did not attend it. High school, he did it all through this mailing service that he, while he worked, and of course my father did not pay for the lessons, my brother Bill had to pay for it. And I remember one incident when my brother, he was working and he was, of course, all of his money he turned back gave to my mother and father to help, raise the family. And in turn they would give him some back, which he, well, I really don't know what the amount was, but until he saved enough and that he would save for whatever he wanted. And it came to find out about he saved, I guess, up until $20. I don't know how long it took him. And he wanted to buy a rifle. And my father said, under one condition only, that rifle will never be loaded in the house. You can go in the woods and shoot as much as you want, but that house, that rifle gun can never be loaded in the house. Well, my brothers, in the home we had, my brothers had one great big room. I think Stevie and Pete had one bed. And Bill,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. How many
Well,
bedrooms?
Steve and I slept together,
Stevie and Peter
and
and
Bill and,
Mickey.
No wonder you were always in
and my
trouble.
brother John had a bed of his own because he was always in playing football and baseball and basketball and everything else, and so he was always injured some way or another. So he had to have his own bed. So anyway,
Yeah, but there was just one big room where the
yeah,
six
it was a
were.
big room.
two double beds and a single bed.
Like a barracks?
This room.
Like a barracks,
Yeah.
yeah, beds,
Yeah.
yeah, like bunk beds, because that's all they were really, were bunk beds, you know.
And so, I think it was, were you the one that was fooling with Mickey? Who had the gun?
No,
Johnny, I think it was,
no, it was Steve.
Sure, blame it on Gramps.
Steve got the pistol,
It was a
right.
rifle.
No, it was a pistol.
No,
No.
Peter's
Talking
it
about another
was a
story,
rifle.
probably.
This is another one.
Yeah, no, this is a rifle. And two of my brothers, Mickey was the one that somebody shot at. I thought it was you.
John. I thought it was
But
John.
John, anyway, one of my brothers took it and aimed it at my brother, because it's not supposed to be loaded. So he was just aiming it at my brother, and boom, 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 you know. And he pulled it, and the bullet went right there, and just missed somebody's head.
Yeah.
My father heard the shot downstairs.
Yes, ma'am.
You never saw anyone go up those stairs as fast as my father did. Took the gun, didn't say anything to the boys, walked right down the
Yeah.
end of the street, and there was a river down the thing, and he threw the gun into the water, and that was it. He said, no more guns in the house,
That was upstairs in the bedroom?
in the upstairs in the bedroom. They were just fooling around. And so from then on, no guns were in the house. And you can imagine how my brother Bill felt when he came home after the hard-earned money he saved.
Right, because he wasn't even involved,
He
right?
wasn't. They were just fooling around in the bedroom. Boy. But then I'll tell you another story about my brother Peter.
She knows because she was closer to them.
Yeah, because Nellie and George were the last one. Those two were
We're out of there most of
they
the
were
time.
always playing together. I'll tell you a story about that too, because my brother Stephen, or my brother George, we almost lost him, and nobody knew what was wrong with him when he was just a little boy. And he and Nellie always played together, and because we were going to school and they weren't, so they were home with Grandma. And my father had every doctor in the city look at my brother George, and everybody gave up on him. They said that he was going to die. And
How old was he, Aunt Mary, around?
Probably about 3,
Oh, 3?
probably about 3 years old.
and so
Boy, he proved them wrong.
well, my father was talking to somebody else, and they said, well, there's one doctor in town that you haven't seen yet. So they said, why don't you try him? And that was Dr. Hunt. So my father called in Dr. Hunt, and he took George to the hospital. George was the first one, I guess, that ever went to the hospital
That
first.
was the House of Mercy Hospital.
Which is now
Yeah.
Berkshire Medical.
And I don't know what it actually was wrong with him, but Dr. Hunt tapped his back and a spine or something and drew water from his spine. And I think he was in for quite a while. And no children could go visit him, so my mother would always, or my grandmother would come, when they visited him, would come home and tell us, how he was doing and asking that. And all the time he kept saying, when am I going to go downstairs and play with Nellie? He didn't know he was in the hospital.
Oh,
He thought that
really?
he was upstairs in a bedroom, and
The only
so
thing
he's
I
always-
remember about that is I think that they thought he was going to get lockjawed, I
Yeah.
remember. And Mom stuck
Her
one
finger.
of her fingers in his mouth, and she kept it there, and he bit it so hard that
She
lost
carried
that.
that
Yeah, yeah.
all her
And
life.
she lost the sense of
No
feel
feeling,
in that
no.
one finger.
till the day
For
she died.
life, she did?
Yeah, till the day she died, she had no
Yeah.
feeling in that finger.
That's one way to make your mark, Uncle George. And Hun, what do you remember about Uncle Bill?
Well, as George said, he was a religious man, and Nellie can relate to it because they had a club. well, Aunt Madeline, I think was there.
Yeah.
That was before they were married, I think, wasn't it, when they first started?
It
I'm
could have
not
been,
sure.
yeah,
And Nellie,
yeah.
and
I
Tommy
see you said-
Sitzman, who was a very religious person. But he knew Father Santini very, very well. And Father Santini was from Mount Carmel. And he was what kind of a priest of Stigmatine order. And he was their spiritual leader.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they used to have religious sessions. And where did you have them? I can't.
We used to go from
to
different house to
houses.
house. They let me go after a while, you know.
Oh, you used to go to house to house?
Yeah, different houses, and you know, you'd sit and read and pray and
Yeah,
know,
and have a discussion about,
in discussion.
it was a
Yeah.
discussion study group.
Yeah.
And that's where he met Aunt Madeline?
Well, no, he met Aunt Madeline because Bill worked in the milk exchange. Because the milk exchange on
Madeline
Francis
worked there.
Avenue or whatever that, I think
Yeah, it was Francis Avenue.
And she was an office girl in the office, and that's how they met,
They met at work.
at work.
Who would you guys say is the most outgoing when you were growing up? The one that was either the clown or the one that got in trouble all the time?
Well, I don't know for the clown, but I mean, most of the boys, I know your father was a clown, Peter used to clown,
Your
your
grandfather.
grandfather, sorry.
That's not a surprise.
And,
Oh, yeah, Steve was the
Steve was the second oldest, right?
Yeah.
He was the most outgoing. He was the one that could talk to anybody.
Yeah, he was
Most of the rest of us aren't where we sit.
Yeah, he was the
But
most
Steve would talk
friendly.
to anybody.
He was and also he was the most mechanical mind.
Oh, yeah.
He could fix anything.
And many times today, I keep saying, if only Steve was here, he'd get it fixed, you know.
She said it
But then there
yesterday.
came Peter.
That came Peter's right. Well, I follow Steve's footsteps because I was the guy that always had to, Steve would say, hey, give me a wrench, give me a screwdriver. That's how I learned. I was the guy that had the kid that handled everything.
But I'm going to tell you, when they were growing up, and they were of course older, and it was they were going to a party, and somehow or other, Bill and Stevie were going, and somehow or other, Peter found a way to get in, mixed in with them and go too, you know. And, so I guess where they went, and I guess this was the first time that he ever had any beer or anything, you know. And
Who, Uncle Pete or Graham?
all three boys.
Oh.
They went to a party and they came home, and I guess that they had beer. But evidently, Bill and Steve didn't have as much as Peter, or because it was Peter's first time, I don't know. But anyway, they were okay. Your grandfather, Steve was telling us that they were okay until they got into the yard. And of course, they had to go with my brother Bill, because my brother Bill was the only one that had a license. And they drove in the car, and all of a sudden, Peter started to cry. And they kept saying, shut up, Pops is going to hear you. He said, don't make any noise. He's going to find out what you're doing. Shut up. And he was crying, Pops is going to kill me. Pops is going to kill me. And everything else. So my father opens the door, takes one look at them, and he says to the fellas, go upstairs and go to bed. He says, I am not going to talk to you tonight because it wouldn't make an impression on what I'm going to tell you. But don't think you're going to get away with it. I'll see you in the next morning. And that was it. That's what I remember about their first time when they came home inebriated, I guess.
My father was like that. If he knew there was something wrong, he didn't say a word. Following day, that's when he walked all over you. Following day.
Out in the woodshed.
Yeah.
But he was great.
And another thing I
I
remember,
remember that. He had a strap.
My father was
Did he
great,
use
but
it
was
often?
great, too.
Used it.
He used it on all of us.
Mostly on Gramps and Uncle Pete?
mostly on Peter. Mostly on Peter, I remember.
I'm not surprised at that for
Mostly
some
on
reason.
Peter.
And when it come to night, and we were out, my father says, when just as starting to get drunk, my father would go,
Yeah.
we come a-running.
The whistle?
So many minutes to
That's all he
go.
did. He put his big
So
two
many
fingers
minutes to
in his
get
mouth, he
home.
blew that whistle. We came a-running.
And did you ever not come running when he whistled?
No way.
Oh, we weren't late either. We were there.
Well, what about Uncle Johnny? Was he as rowdy as you and Gramps?
Oh, Johnny was more athletic.
You know, he's been all his
He
time.
loves sports.
Well, speaking of sports, tell us about that famous Spasyk baseball team that took on the pros.
Semi-pros.
Oh,
Semi-pros.
That was we had my father organized what we called the Ukrainian club baseball team. All the Spasyk played it, all but George. George was the official scorekeeper.
I kept score.
The best scorekeeper you ever seen. And he could write up the best write-ups about our games that you ever seen.
Appeared in the Eagle.
Yes, sir. I've got beautiful clippings of the write-ups that George used to put in the paper about our team. George was a good writer in that.
And so now you know how George got his job. I mean,
Yeah.
that was the start of his writing and
He was an official
speaking
scorekeeper.
engagements.
And Troy out in Stockbridge, Troy Ford Garage, he had a semi-pro team. He had a lot of college kids play. He'd get all the college kids during the summer, and he started this semi-pro team. And under the table, he would pay these kids to play for him. So this one Sunday, we called on my father early. He says, "Look at the team we had booked today. Can't show up, and we've got to have a team. Can you get your boys together?" My father got us all together, put us in the back of his truck, and off to Stockbridge we go. Well, young Ferrara and my brother John was catching. I was Steve. Steve, I'm trying to think.
Bill didn't play. Oh, no, Bill didn't play.
Huh?
Bill didn't play.
Bill didn't play,
Bill
no.
Bill never.
John was catching. I played short. Steve played third, I think, at the time. And then we had these other boys playing with us.
Of the Ukrainian
Well,
boys, yes.
And they had a kid from Colgate, one of the best pitchers they ever had. Well, we beat them by 1 run. And he told my father, "Never will I ever ask you to bring your team to play against us again." That was the end of that.
And George wrote it up in the Eagle.
Oh, yes.
You got a good write-up.
Mickey have
Oh, well, George,
a story about when
I got to tell you about
one
this
would
one.
catch and one would pitch, and if they didn't like
Oh. Mom wants you to tell the part about when one of you would catch and one of you would pitch.
Well, I was pitching and Steve was catching. That was on the playgrounds. In them days, every playground had a baseball team. And Pontusic, we were playing for Pontusic at the time. So we were playing down here, playing against the Common. In them days, the umpire stood behind the pitcher. Well, I was throwing him in there, and Steve didn't like the way he was called. So he calls me in, and he says, come here, Pete.
Say this louder, Uncle Pete.
You've been pitching a good ball. Them are strikes, and he's calling them balls. He says, I'll tell you what. When the next time you throw the ball, I want you to duck, or to bend down. You think you're tying your shoes, and I'm going to throw that ball. And he threw it, and I ducked, and he caught the umpire right. And that was the end of that.
That's what was going on in the neighborhood during those days when they were all in the house.
Okay, what would you guys do for fun, or what was it like in your neighborhood when you were all growing up?
Oh, well, you know, we had the house with the store in front. I don't know if you kids remember. In fact, the store is still there on Upper North
We know
Street.
where the store is.
Yeah, well, that used to be the store. Well, all the neighborhood kids would come there. All the boys would, and Graham, our grandmother,
Baba?
yeah, you know, that all the fellas called her Baba too. So if they ever got rowdy or anything, all she had to do is go out there and stand like this, and they'd all run away, you know, because they knew that they weren't doing what they should be doing. So she was like, you know.
Yeah, and also there was a lamp post with a light there, which you know, so she could see everything. And they used to play craps and cards,
Cards.
and all that. And so
Penny Andy.
it came kind of late or something. Bam just opens up the window, throws a pail of water on it. So that ended the card game.
Now, during the Depression, did the store stay open?
Yes, Pops ran it on credit.
Yeah, let me hear about that, because we've heard...
He could never pressure anybody.
Yeah.
Well, people just didn't have the money, and he was just good-hearted, and he would keep a notebook, and whenever anybody bought anything, he'd write down. When he finally gave up the store, he just threw his thing away and never collected it.
Yeah, and in fact, our dining room table was a payment for somebody's bill. And we had that, and it was a good mahogany,
Oh, really?
heavy-legged, and everything. And that was our dining room table for many, many years.
Now, do you remember?
that.
Oh, go ahead,
I
Uncle
remember right.
Pete.
That was, remember Nixon's store down
Yeah,
there?
that's
He
what,
folded during the Depression. My father stayed open. And he was buying the groceries from my father to keep his family going.
On credit.
On credit. Everything was on credit, see? And then when he no longer could pay those bills, that's when he offered my father this dining room table. And we had that table for a good many years.
I remember playing pinochle on it. Our brothers taught us how to
and
play
it was like he
pinochle.
gave us and
Another thing I remember
Well,
about
we're always
Peter.
playing cards.
Cards on it, oh yeah.
Peter, when I was still going to school, and Peter was already working, and then I think you were working the second shift, or you used to have fellas come in and play cards.
We used to
Right,
play
in the dining room
cards.
table.
Yeah.
And they would say, and Graham would be in the kitchen, and she every so often she'd come out and say, "You're not playing for money, are you?" "Oh no, Graham, oh no." and so the money would be under the table, and everything else. But she always would come in and check on them, every so often, and whatnot. But they were playing cards, but they were playing for money.
But do you?
Coming home from school, and they would be there playing cards.
That kitchen was always open for anybody that wanted to come in
She would
and
feed
have a donut from Grandma. She used to make the donuts like this. And
She made coffee all the time.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was open house.
all the
It
time.
was open house to everybody.
That's why we're not used to going to anybody's house, because even though there was nine of us in our house, my mother and father always had everybody. Nobody in the house had a key.
Sounded like our house.
The door was always open. All the kids would always come on, and in the neighborhood would come and we'd play, and we had an extra lot where my father had peach trees and apple trees, and my grandma and my mother had a huge garden. My father had one beautiful roses, and quite a few of the teachers used to walk because in those days the teachers didn't have cars like they have today. So they used to always walk to the school, and they walked by our yard and always see the roses and everything else. So we got more invitations to their classrooms to see, "Would you mind bringing me some roses? Would you mind bringing me some flowers?" My father and mother said, "Boy, you certainly are very handy, giving all away my hard work."
Well, do you? Oh, go ahead, Aunt Hon.
Also, I can remember they not only played cards, but they pitched pennies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, up against the wall of the house, they were pitching pennies out there. And it was all the boys in the neighborhood. Then they all lived around, Upper North Street.
Don't forget, for a penny, we could buy a package of gum.
Well, tell me, during the Depression, did you really feel like that you were depressed at that time, or?
No, we didn't.
Never.
I think our family was the first to have a bathtub in the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
You were the only one to what?
To have a bathtub
The first
in the
bathtub
house.
in the house. Yeah.
Prior to that, we took our weekly bath Saturday night in a big barrel in the kitchen.
In the kitchen.
Till what age?
Well, I don't know.
When you were growing up?
Not only,
In preschool. In preschool.
The clean-
Oh, yeah.
the clean ones got in first, the dirty ones go last.
And they would heat the water on the wood stove.
Yeah.
And as somebody got out, dried off and got dressed, the next kid got in, they had a little more hot water.
That's
and
the top of the
gradually-
tub, the
And
wooden
gradually
barrel.
fill up this barrel. And after all the kids took their baths in this one barrel, then the mom and pops would take it. We never knew whether they were in there together or one by one, but we always wondered about it. And they would take their baths last after all the kids
But then when we got
dressed and
Take your
gone
bath
up
and
to
go
bed.
up to
But then we got the bathtub upstairs, and
All the kids in the neighborhood.
Nice back in our bathtub. Not the same water, because by that time we had running water, hot running water and everything.
Books and books. I remember you and Noonie and I taking the bath, three of us in the tub all together, enjoying the new tub.
Yeah.
I can remember that.
So really, during the war, you really didn't feel that it was wartime as much as probably some of the other ones did because of the way your mother and father
No
were?
more than depression, because we had about an acre of garden.
Yeah.
Grandma used
They
to go in
grew everything that we ate.
And they had.
Oh, you had your own garden?
That was one of the things my father would never believed in. He never believed in welfare or getting help from the city, even during Depression, because he said that there's so many things that you could do, and I guess it was pride or something, I don't know, but he never wanted anything for nothing. And like the family next door would go and the city would give them free flour and things, and they didn't have half as many children as my father and mother did. And my father would go dig ditches for contractors or something to earn extra
Yeah,
money.
that's right. He used to go work for, he'd work in the mill and then he'd go work for a contractor. But
Well, that's where you all got your good work ethic
Yeah,
from.
and you know what I can remember about that too, you know, where we used to live, and there was, Goodman Lane was on the corner, and it was an unaccepted street, you know, and it was terrible and stuff like that. But the coal truck would go by, you know, all the time to the people that lived down below us. And I can remember collecting coal from the thing and bringing it home in a bag. That fell off the truck.
Well, Baba was still alive, your grandmother, during that time. I remember Uncle Pete and Grant both telling us about Baba being a faith healer. Who remembers about that?
I remember.
Well, the way it first started, what I remember is some young fella came to the house, put him in that. We had that one couch.
Talk louder, please, Uncle Pete.
Peter Pope always slept on. And she took a red flannel, if I can remember, put it over his head, took a candle.
What was wrong with this kid?
Huh?
What was wrong with the guy?
I forgot what they called it, George, but there was no cure for it. After she got through with him, he got up and walked out. The same thing happened down in the old House of Mercy Hospital.
Yeah, that's something we.
When this woman came up, she had a son in the hospital. They could do nothing for him. They gave him up. They gave up.
saying that he was.
And this Polish woman came up to the house. She begged my grandmother if she would go down and do that for him. She says, I can't. I would get arrested. She says, don't worry about it. I will bring 4 or 5 Polish women with me, and we'll station them all over the hospital in the room. We'll station them while you go into that room. She says, all right. She went down there. I remember that. And these women stayed out in the hallway and everything. In case anybody came along, they were going to holler. She went into that room, and she did the same thing for that young fella. The next day, the kid went home, and today they still don't know what was wrong with him. That youngster went home the next day.
And then when my father found out she had done that and everything else, oh my goodness, he laid her out in lavender and he said, don't ever do that again.
You could have been arrested.
Yeah. He said, what if the child had died or something? What would happen to you?
So about how many times did this happen?
Not too many times. There wasn't too many times.
But there weren't very many children in the neighborhood that my grandmother didn't deliver.
She drugged every kid in the neighborhood. My grandmother delivered them.
Now, didn't she also nurse other kids?
No.
Was that Baba or was that your mother?
My mother.
Your mother.
My mother nursed your grandfather and your grandmother at the same
Wow.
time. Because your
Peter was on one side and Dot was on the other.
And because my mother had an awful lot of milk, and your great grandmother, it was your grandmother and her great grandmother.
Yeah.
Didn't have any at all, so she was a small.
So she nursed Mimi?
Yep, she nursed Mimi, and it's funny that later on they married.
Someone tell me about your mother's soap that she used to make, because I remember that soap.
I still have one bar.
Do you really?
You still have a
I still have a bar.
I know Jean and Marco had some when I was up there the last time. And
You
I
couldn't have
think
it
was
in-
just about empty.
You had a dress that was white and it would then turn yellow. All you had to use was this soap. And I still use it for stains, and I guard it. I won't let anybody else use it because she wrote to me and asked me if I had any left. And no way is anybody getting this last piece of soap.
So
I
you
should
saved
show
it?
to you when you're down. You know.
I'll have to see it because I remember any stain would come out with that soap. It
Yeah.
was like the magic soap.
Especially the boys' dirty socks after playing.
Well, you can imagine. Yeah, you can imagine with 6 boys in the family and all the clothes she had to wash, and all the women in the neighborhood used to come to my mother and say, "How do you get your clothes so white?" Because she had the whitest clothes on the line than anybody in the
The
neighborhood.
closest soap I think that ever came to was naphtha.
Naphtha soap, I
Yeah,
think,
that
was
was
the closest, yeah.
just the closest
Because
thing.
if I'm not mistaken, I think the only ingredient I remember in that was lye.
Lye.
Lye,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
very, yeah.
Now,
But then-
speaking, oh,
but
go
then
ahead, Uncle
Pop
George.
would also make beer,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. they
beer
make
for the adults and root beer for the
Root
kids.
beer, yeah.
Oh, really?
And this was during Prohibition.
What were some of the other
And we would
homemade
bottle it.
remedies that you used?
Hmm?
What were some of the other homemade remedies that you had when you were growing up? Do you remember?
Well, I don't know if that's part of my trouble now with my stomach or not, but when I used to be small and I used to throw up, I couldn't stop throwing up until my mother rubbed kerosene under my nose. The only thing that would stop me from upchucking.
Kerosene?
Kerosene.
Thank God nobody smoked.
Well, she just put it on her finger and rub it under my nose, and that was the only thing that would stop me from upchucking.
What do you most remember about your mother and what type of person she was?
She was a very quiet, easy-spoken.
Nothing bothered her.
Well, that explains my mother then.
If anybody had a cut or anything else, she could not take care of us. After bringing 9 children into the world, my father was the one that always bandaged our cuts or took us to the hospital or something. I can remember one time when my brother Johnny played football, and I guess in practice or something, in one of the shuffles or something, somebody broke his collarbone in one of the get-togethers or something, and so what was the doctor's name? Was it Dr. Young or Dr. Wood? That was the high school physician.
Wood, yeah.
Dr. Wood.
Dr. Wood, yeah.
My mother, anytime
Yeah, he
that
was
doctor
the
would come to the house
physician.
first and rap at the door, and my mother went to the door, and all she had to do was see Dr. Wood. She passed right out, and then she looked at Johnny, and, oh my gosh, he's got one arm, you know. And then another time, when he came to the door, he was already in the hospital, and she wouldn't go. They had to take my father down, and then after Johnny had been treated, it was a broken hip. And when she went, there's his one leg tied up in a post or something. But
Yeah, and then even at that poster, I mean, the thing, he had his foot in the bedroom too.
Yeah.
I mean, when
Yeah.
he came home, his foot had to be
Yeah,
raised
that's
in the
right.
bedroom like
They
that,
kept you
with
on,
all
yeah.
these things hanging
Yeah,
down.
I know.
That was when he played football in high school.
But then my sister Nellie takes after my mother because every Saturday night, my brother there would be a basketball game at the boys' club. And every Saturday night, my mother would make sure you hurry up, eat fast. You know, everybody had their supper and everything else, and we'd all get in the truck and down to the boys' club. We'd go to watch the basketball games, and we used to sit up in the balcony, and the boys were playing downstairs. And I guess my brother Johnny was playing that time. Of course, my brother Johnny was a very good athlete, nothing, but he wasn't a husky fellow. He was a slight, built fellow.
Small compared to.
But he knew how to play and whatnot. And somebody came over. They were playing. At that time, I think they played just as dirty as they could today, as they do today. And I guess Nellie saw it because she's sitting resting on the edge. And my mother thought she was going to fall over, and she turned as white as a sheet because somebody was pulling a dirty trick on my brother John. So after that, my mother said, "No way are we sitting up in the balcony. You're sitting downstairs." But that's what she.
Mary, put
she
a
got
date
me.
on that if you can. Put some dates on these, some of these things.
Well,
Late 30s?
early 30s.
Early 30s, gotta be in the
So it's
early
a little
30s.
different. Oh, sure.
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah, because I graduated from high school at 35, and this was I was still going to school.
in 39, so it was.
Gotta be in the early 30s.
And Boys Club was the same place where it was now?
Yeah.
Yes, the same place where it is now. And we
Every
used to walk
Saturday
it.
night, we're there.
There was no riding, so from Upper North where we lived, all winter long, we'd walk down to the boys' club and plow our way up through the snow to get back home at night.
Now, Peter, that's not
Always
true.
walk.
Tell me about
No
the
ride.
trolleys that you used to jump on.
Oh, that was O'Connor Street, though. It never went up Upper North Street. We lived in Upper North Street.
No trolleys you used to jump on every once in a while, Peter, and get
Yeah.
wrecked?
Down on O'Connor Street.
That were the trolleys down the foot of the hill.
Yeah, the hill, O'Connor Street.
Corner Street, around the corner.
We never had
You
a
had to
trolley
go
on
around
North
there,
Street.
when there was Dury's Butcher Market there, then the company house. Around this corner, the trolley had to go very slow.
Yeah.
So we would jump on the back, see, and we ride up up where the Pontoons Lake Dam is now. That's where they had the switch. So they had to slow down, then we'd take it off, see. Well, this winter, it was kind of cold out, see. So my brother John and I, we were going to take a ride. We made one big mistake. We put our tongue on that little bar, and we couldn't get it off. Oh, it stayed. Well, you want to see two short tongues. I'm telling you, we never did it again. Don't ever put your tongue on a cold bar. Believe me, it stays there.
Unless there's a cold beer there.
We didn't know how. Johnny, you take the tongue off that bar until it started to bleed, and we took a little skin with it.
Well, who's got a
It
story?
hurt,
Who's got a
believe me, it
story
hurt.
about Uncle Mickey?
Well, he was the gardener. He could grow the most beautiful flowers and vegetables, and always used to keep us all supplied with them. He took after my father. My father had beautiful roses and beautiful trees, and he was a wonderful bowler. He could bowl, and best bookkeeper, I guess that.
And also Mickey was a gymnast.
Oh, yeah.
He was a gymnast?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
he was good in high
Good,
school.
and it was, I don't know if anybody remembers, is old enough to remember Coach Carmody from
Yes,
Pittsfield,
yes.
yeah. Well, he really took care of Mickey very well. He put him in all the exhibitions
Yes.
and on
Used
the
to go to
parallel
Springfield.
bars.
What did he do specifically, hon? What part of the...
Anything you see that the
Parallel
gymnasts
bars,
do.
Yeah.
Tumbling.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And the rings.
The rings,
and,
you know, those
anything
rings.
more or
In
less.
one, exhibition, I guess his body was painted all gold. He was
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And
he was a gymnast,
He was
because
very
he was
good.
slender, you
Yeah.
know, and everything. I can remember his white long pants that had
Yeah.
the elastic around
Yeah.
here, because when they stand up, you know,
parallel bars.
yeah, he was really,
Too
really a
bad we
good.
didn't take pictures then.
Well, did you go most places as a family? You know, sporting events and
Oh, yeah.
church
Yeah.
events?
We
Yeah.
went to
Anybody
everyone.
was,
Yeah.
we used to,
My mother, too.
used to go when John, was the University Mom. We used to leave, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. We'd drive all the way up to Burlington.
All of you?
All of us,
Yes,
And how many cars?
One truck.
One truck.
What kind of truck?
Back of, my father had a Dodge truck where the curtains come down, two sides and the back. He put a couple seats in the back. We take off.
Yeah, we'd go.
When did you get your first
We put our
car?
clothes in shoe boxes. We didn't have a suitcase.
Oh, I'll tell you about
We pack our clothes in a shoe box.
the first car in the family is your grandfather saved enough money, and he was wonderful in repairing cars. And Billy Nesbitt next door had a car, and he was going to get a new one, so he was going to sell this one to Steve. So my father said, if he got the money, he said, I can't help you. So Stevie bought the car. Was it Studebaker?
Oakland touring car.
Yeah, something that was,
Big touring car.
yeah. And
Touring car.
so he fixed it so it could run. So this one Sunday, we're going over to, I think it was Galatia, because we always went to Galatia, Waterbury, and Hudson, Cohoes, to all the Ukrainian dances or plays or anything that all the Ukrainian churches were involved with one another on all these counties. So we were going over there, and Stevie was going to drive his new car, and my father's going in the truck. So, oh boy, we're not gonna ride. We're gonna ride in the car, you know. Now we're not gonna ride in the truck, you know. So going over, everything was fine. After at night, we all got into the touring car with my brother Stevie driving. We get to Lebanon Mountain. Chug, 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 and they go out. So my father stops the truck, you know, and puts a hitch on it and pulls
Stevie all the way home. Pull Stevie home.
Yeah, I remember another time, there was the car in the truck or somebody, and one of the cars lost the lights. So one had the car with the lights had to go first, and the other one was right in back of us.
Because we're coming back from
over the mountain.
Lebanon Mountain.
How long would it take you to get over there in one of those cars?
Well, I'll tell you, the car couldn't go 35 miles an hour. So figure it out for yourself.
So you left at dawn and didn't get home till the next day.
We were never in a hurry like the people today.
No.
If you're in a hurry, we'd been outside of the car coming up the mountain, and we'd run inside the car. We could run up the mountain faster than the car could make the mountain.
Well, Uncle Pete, what happened if it rained?
We put the signs down on the
Isinglass curtains.
Curtains, yeah.
But what about the windshield? Did you have windshield wipers?
Jeez, I don't recall.
Gramp used to say that you guys invented makeshift windshield wipers before they were ever on
That was
cars.
probably on your grandfather's car, probably.
Right.
And electrical light.
We did it by hand.
Yes.
We had
What did you do?
You put there was a windshield. You had a thing on the top there, the handle.
Yeah, the
And
handle.
as Steve's driving, I got my hand going, cleaning the window off. As Steve's driving, I'm cleaning the window off with my inside like that. We're cleaning the window off.
When did you move from North Street to Connecticut Avenue or New York Avenue?
1957.
Oh, so that's too far away. Go ahead. No, I know, I'm just saying, you jumped too far.
Now, Gramp,
Tell us about the war years.
Yeah, how I know that was 1957 because they moved there I was in Europe.
what were you doing in Europe?
There was 8 women who, at that time were only girls, and during our vacation from GE, you had 2 weeks vacation, but at that time I was getting 4 weeks, so I could stay a month. And there was Madeline's sister Libby, that was one of them, and Mrs. Herbert, she had that travel agency, and so she made out our itinerary, and so we went from LaGuardia, and we landed in Rome, and we saw the Pope and everything.
You did?
We just missed by one day. We missed having an audience by Pope Leo X, and it was Monsignor Marshall had a nephew that was over there studying to be a priesthood, and we got in too late, and he was going to arrange, and Father Marshall said he would, ask him to arrange an audience with them. So we were late one day, and we never had a private one, but we did have a good one, and that was in August, and it was summer, and so that was at Castel Gandolfo, where he was
The
summer residence and thing was there. So we traveled to Rome, Italy, Paris.
And that was in what year, Aunt Hun?
1957, and I still have my slides.
Do you?
Loads and loads of slides.
George, tell him about your first driving lesson. When you took Noonie for a ride.
Oh, I think I was about 6 years old. Pop had always parked his truck out in front of the store, and it was heading down towards the bottom of the hill on North Street. And Ann Buxa, was that her?
Yeah,
We
We all called her Noonie, and they called me Junie. But she was my age, and we were playmates together.
Next door
Yeah, so-
neighbor.
the same
So I thought-
class.
I'd always get in the truck and I'd be the driver and Noonie would be.
Chula would be in the front seat, you know.
This one day, we never went anywhere, but this one day I just happened to notice this lever, and so I
Pushed it.
pushed it, and there we started down the and popped, saw me out the window, and he was chasing me down the hill. And Noonie was screaming, and I was just having a ball, and finally came to a stop at the bottom of the hill in front of.
At 6 years old. At 6 years old, you
Yeah,
did that.
6 years old.
Now, speaking of Junie, was Uncle George the only one with a nickname? How did Aunt Honey get Hun?
Well, actually, I think it probably was because it's Hanya or something like that in Ukrainian, and Grandma used to always call me that. And I guess everybody thought the closest they could say is Hanya.
Oh.
Grandma also called her Heinka.
Heinka?
Heinka.
So that, we got honey out of there.
Did anybody else have
And she
nicknames,
was
or can't we repeat them, Uncle Pete?
She used to be Fresca. And I was,
What were you, Aunt Mary?
I was
He was the one that we used to call
Oh, he was the one that would give
he only
everybody
called
nicknames. He
and I was
he the
Tootsie.
one.
We always called him Tootsie. We always called him Tootsie.
What was Gramps?
Because I think it was,
I was going to call what we call Steve. Did I give him a name? I know I gave Dot, Mike. I used to call her Dot Mike all the time. Remember, Paula? I used to call Dot Mike all
You
the
used
time.
to call Mimi
And
Mike?
then when the Popes came over, the little girl, I says, gee, I think I'll call, what they call her, Spaz? Little Joe. I used to, and, you know, and she called me, not very long, now when she sends me a Christmas card, she'll mark it Little Joe.
I think he did that because he didn't remember people's
I give him a name,
That's right.
So I give him a name.
Tell us about the war years, man. Get into the 40s, and late 30s and 40s, and what was going on.
Okay, wait, I'm going to pause it. Okay, we're recording again. We're going to start with Uncle Pete again, telling a story about Uncle Bill in Canada.
Oh, we went to Montreal. Steve and Dot were going to Montreal, so they invited Bill and I to go with them. Not much time, we didn't pack much clothes. So we get up to Montreal.
How'd you get up there?
Huh?
How'd you get up there?
Dot drove. An old Buick, I think it was an old Buick. We made it all the way up Route 9. We made it.
What were the roads
I
like?
forgot how many hours, but we finally made it. We started early in the morning, we got there at night. But anyway, so we checked into this little motel, like. So the next morning, Bill wanted to go to church. He wanted to see Notre Dame Church, see? So I didn't have a white shirt, so I ran down the hall, and I asked Stevie, and I borrowed a white shirt, and I come back with a white shirt. Stevie says, "Where did you get the white shirt?" I said, "I walked down the hall, I see a door open, it was a nice shirt, I looked at it, it was my size, I took it." Bill said, "You bring that right back, you'll get arrested, you'll go to jail if you don't bring it." I said, "Don't worry about it, the guy won't even know he missed it." So we get dressed, and then we get down, we start walking to Montreal. We're looking for Notre Dame Church, see? So Bill finally walks up to the guy, he says, "Hey, where's Notre Dame Church?" The guy says, "Turn around." Right back of Notre Dame Church.
Now, speaking of Gramp and Mimi, Aunt Mary, you were telling me a story about when you were in this house that you're sitting in right now, and you guys were out on, what was it, the patio, or?
It was a porch, like you have now, except it wasn't as big as that, it was just a little porch out in, well, I guess it must have been right here, because
Just that extension right here, right where Paul and Jesse are.
right apart, and we were having sandwiches and things, and we're just sitting there having a good time, and Pete and Stevie, and I don't know who else was helping you. They were digging out underneath the house because it didn't have a cellar. They wanted to put a cellar in, and all of a sudden, Dot and I landed on everybody came running. I didn't know what happened to us, but the porch just caved in because they had dug too much dirt from under there. The only thing holding us up was the dirt, you know. There wasn't anything else underneath it. So when they took the dirt out, down we
you went.
So what happened, see, we put this wall up here, see, but we forgot to put a brace up there. It rained that day, and it washed down, and it washed the water right through underneath that, and down went the wall. Boom! And down went the side of the house. No brace. We forgot to put a brace up
Yeah, and
there.
I only weighed 89 pounds at that time.
I was out in the lake fishing at that. Everybody screamed, "Quick, pick the houses up!" So we come running home.
Well, I guess this audience right here, and I'll show everybody that's here, I'll go around. I had no idea this many people were sitting behind us. Hi, Butchie. Hi, Murph. Hi, Tab. Kate. Is Jimmy awake? I want to zoom in.
Nobody gets haircut.
Uncle James? Hi, Dad.
Hi.
Steve?
How about Stevie down here? Little Stevie.
Where's little Steve? There he is. We've got the girls. Where's Amby? Okay, some of the questions that they wanted to ask you was back to the war and what it was like during that time. One of the questions Jesse asked.
Yeah, was it like scary or anything? Like
Over here, well, they used to have drills, and they would, the sirens would go off. Then everybody had the lights, the street lights went out. You had to put all the lights out in your house. You had to put your shades down, and then they would have
blackout curtains.
They would have you'd have to cover your curtains and everything, and they would have civil defense, like George and Uncle Bill used to be part of the civil defense. They had these white caps. They'd have a flashlight, and they would go up and down the streets to make sure nobody was disobeying the blackout.
So, did you remember being scared as a child when that would happen?
Not being scared for ourselves, but really being very scared of the boys that went over, because next to us there was a young boy named Daniel Buxa, and he was only 16 years old, and he was in high school, and he wanted to go so badly into the service, so he lied about his age. He said he was 17, and he was on one of those destroyers that was the escort for the troop ships over the Atlantic. And I remember when he came back on furlough, after being out maybe for about a year, he came back, and he was really scared, he says, because he had, and
He really didn't want to go back.
he didn't want to go back, but he did, and that was the last time we ever saw him. He was lost at sea.
Did you lose a lot of friends over there?
Yeah, I knew some, because I started working in the GE, at the beginning of the war, and in fact, I started in February of '41, and we actually got into the war, in December 7th of '41, but GE was already making, things for the war in Europe, so people that I worked with, boys that were on the apprentice program that went in, there were several that never came back.
Well, what was the form of communication? Because there wasn't television, so was it mostly by radio that you heard what was happening? There was television by then?
Television, there was television.
What year?
Because television was about 39, wasn't it, when it actually started?
No, it came in 47.
I never saw television.
Peter was the first one to have.
Yeah, we had television
Peter was the first.
So what did you rely on? Radio?
Radio and newspapers.
Do you remember sitting around as a family listening to the radio?
Oh, we always done that.
Ask them if they remember the time when war was declared. How did
Dad, they can hear you.
I think we were, I can remember,
Go ahead, Dad.
There was a bulletin board on North Street.
sitting in the house on North Street when the radio interrupted all programming, and they announced that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was.
It's 1940.
I didn't know that actually was part of the United States. I considered Hawaii a foreign country, even though legally it was part of the United States. So it didn't have that much impact on me, but obviously it
Well, you know,
it
when
did.
we went to the movies, that's when we got a lot of, remember, we
The
had
news-
newsreels.
the newsreels,
They had
yeah.
newsreels in those days, you know, and you got a lot of, that's where you got a lot of your information. And then, of course, they used to have the specials. They used to go out, what did they call them? And the kids would come in the... Extra, and they...
Scared the living daylights out of you, whoever time you heard
They
an
used to
extra.
go
Is that where extra read all about it came from?
Yeah, and the newspapers, the Eagle would publish a newspaper.
Kate was asking where the movies were at.
Oh, we had...
Downtown, all downtown.
Well, tell us about downtown. How much
We had the
has it
Strand
changed?
Theater. Your grandfather worked in the
Yeah, we used to
Strand
get Strand for nothing.
He used to let us go into the...
He used to be a ticket collector at one of the theaters, and we'd win for nothing.
Yeah.
Palace, Capitol,
Union Square, Cameo,
Union,
Colonial.
on Union
the
Street.
Colonial down there.
There's one on Union Street, remember what was the name?
Yeah, that's still
Union
there.
Square.
That's the old, yeah.
And the old Colonial is what?
On
Miller
South
Supply?
Street.
Yes, Miller Supply.
Miller Supply.
Miller Supply.
And then Tyler Street had a...
Yeah,
In
Tyler
fact,
Street.
that's my first movie, was the Tyler Street, and it was a silent movie.
And at Tyler Street too, of course, this was before I was at St. Mary's and stuff, but that Tyler Theater, St. Mary, before St. Mary's was built, they used to have mass at the
Tyler Street movie.
Theater.
Yeah.
Tyler Street.
Well, what do you see as the biggest change, say, in downtown Pittsfield? Does it look pretty much the same, or is it?
Empty buildings.
No way.
What was it like when you guys were growing up?
On Easter Sunday with our Easter bonnets, we used to always walk down from North Street all the way down there and look into the window. And of course, we were lucky, we had a corsage, you know, and all that. And then when we used to sit in the cars later on, we used to sit in the cars and watch the
everybody
Easter
else.
parade on North Street. Of course, English, right, we used to try to get in front of England Brothers.
But all the action was downtown?
Downtown. Jesse was asking about the war. When the war ended, North Street was mobbed. There were thousands and thousands of people. All we did was walk up and down the street. I don't know where you kids were born yet, or
Oh, we were born.
you were born. Do you remember that, Jim, at all? Yeah. Everybody, the whole city went down the street and we walked. All we did was walk up and down the streets and kissing and hugging everybody around. That was
You
the
were
end
so
of the war.
relieved?
It was, you can't believe it. There were thousands and thousands of people. In fact, that was after, because we were working and there were some of the employees that played in an orchestra. They I don't know where they went. They got their instruments. We went across the Woodlawn Avenue Bridge, down around, and from all of the buildings in the GE, we all formed a parade, and we all walked around. And then, of course, they let us, we had a 3-day vacation from work.
So you guys were all working in GE?
Yeah.
Peter, what were you doing at that time, you and Steve? And Bill?
Steve was
And Mickey?
working for Bricks and Wool and making blankets and stuff for the
Yeah,
army.
Rich alone was.
And I was working in the plastics at the time, because we were staying with Dot and Steve at the time, and we just got married. And
Yeah, that-
four of us sitting there, and the radio come on when Roosevelt declared war. The whole three of us looked at each other and we started to cry. We started
Yeah,
crying.
because they were,
Because we were draft age.
yeah, they were.
So we didn't know what was going to happen, see?
Yeah.
And we just got married. Butchie says to me, now what am I going to do? So, and then I got a call right away. I got my notice. I went down to the boys' club to get examined, and I got past the thing. Then I get back to G, and I'm waiting and waiting. First thing, the boss comes down to me and says, we're going to hold you back for a year, because we just started to build the plastic caps for the motor shells. And the Army says, you're not producing enough, And if you don't start promoting, we're gonna move in and take over. Well, we're gonna take the whole plant over away from you. So they told us, so we were working 12 hours a day, 13 days, every 13 days we got off. That's how we were working to keep up our production.
How much an hour were you making? Do you remember?
Yes. When I first joined the GE, I worked 60 hours. My first paycheck was $18.50, and was I happy.
And Uncle Pete, what year was that
I was
about?
a millionaire because I owned the city of Pittsfield.
And it was in what year, Uncle Pete?
Huh?
What year was that about, that you were making that money?
I was 22 years old, so figure it out. I'm 83 now. I was 22 years old.
Wow, so in the 30s.
Yeah.
Ask Honey and Mary what they were doing.
Just before the Depression.
What were you doing during that time?
I was working in GE.
Do you remember, do you have the same kind of feelings on Hun when the war ended?
Oh,
When
God,
it
yes.
was going
Yeah,
on.
in fact, I used to write a lot to a lot of the fellows that used to work with me, that were in the service and stuff. And actually, I even I had stood up for Mary Humanek. I don't know who knows it, but she was sort of distantly related. I guess her mother's second husband was a Spasyk, but not just a cousin of Pops's. She married Tony Maluda, and his brother was the maid of honor, the best man, and I was their maid of honor. And he was in the Air Force, and I used to write to him. And so I went out with him, I guess, a couple of times or so. And then I'll never forget the day that his sister called me, or else Mary, and said something about that they just got a telegram from the government saying that their plane went down and no bodies were found, so he never was located. That was during the war. That was one of the guys that I had lost. Then there was another fellow that I used to, that was Matt Darchuk. He was Ukrainian, and his mother and father were part of that group. They lived in Valencia at one time. Then they moved back to Pittsfield, and then he and I used to date him when he used to. Then they moved to New York, I guess, and then I used to date him. He used to come out to Pittsfield and Klima, and then we used to go out all together. And he was a Navy, in the Navy Air Force, and I forgot what he was at that time or anything. But anyway, he had sent me a pair of gold wings at that time. Then a fellow that used to work for George, he didn't work for you, Lou Purd. Yeah, and he was in the service, and he had sent me a pair of wings. I got more wings from people that I used to write to, during the war, and they would always, they used to say, to write to the fellows at home because they, that they really appreciate your letters. So I used to write to quite a few people. I used to write to Cousin Mickey, and all the time, and Walt. Cousin Mickey was in the Army. Walt was in the, and Walt and Bill were both in the Coast Guard.
Did you have big celebrations when they came home?
Gee, I don't even remember. Well, I remember too much about the celebrations. But I used to write to everybody. I used to write to a couple of fellas from Cohoes that were in the service.
What was one of your...
George had a good experience.
Yes.
I know,
How
we don't
about
want George
George?
yet. We want Mary. We want to find out from Mary what she was doing during the war. Then we'll go to George.
Okay.
He's
But I
the
was
baby.
doing the war. I was married by then because I was married in 1941, and then when my husband was drafted, Alan was drafted. I went to work for GE in the plastics.
How long was he drafted for? Was he actually in
Yes,
till it
He
ended?
was in the medical corps, and he was stationed in Stuttgart, Germany.
And then when he came back to the States, I can remember Mary and me taking the train down to Tennessee to visit him down at the thing, taking the train down after he came back from England.
Wow.
Now ask George what he was doing.
What were you doing, Uncle George, during that time?
several interesting things.
Driving an ambulance.
I graduated from high school in 1940, and the plan was to go to college, but I was only 16 at the time, and the folks thought that that was too young to go to college, so they wanted me to wait at least a year. So I got a job as an apprentice in the apprentice program at GE, and they put me in the chemistry lab there, just to wash test tubes and that sort of thing. But they thought that I had some potential in learning some chemistry, so they sent me to Williams College that summer. They bussed us, 2 or 3 of us up every day, and we took intensive training in analytical chemistry. That's one very narrow chemistry field. So when I finished that summer training, they let me actually do some analytical chemical analysis at the GE plant. Well, there were 9 graduate chemists there, PhDs in chemistry. 8 of them had graduated from the University of Michigan, and 1 was from Princeton University. He was the chairman of that department at GE. His name was Sam Ashley. I don't know if you remember him. Well, yeah, I worked there for a year, just doing chemistry. And then in the fall of the following year, in the fall of '42, I went to Michigan to enroll, and I was able to spend only 1 semester there because the draft, I would have been drafted. So I came home after 1 semester preparing to be drafted into the Army. But when I got home, I had an attack of acute appendicitis. So I had to go to the hospital, House of Mercy again. And in those days, they kept you for appendicitis, they kept you in the hospital for about 2 weeks. Now they get you up to same day. But I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and while I was there recuperating, Sam Ashley, the head of the chemistry department at GE, came in to visit me from time to time. And he knew that I was scheduled to go into the Army as soon as I got out of the hospital, so he said, "What would you think about going to Princeton University to work on a secret government project in doing some analytical chemistry?" I said, "What?" So he said, "I think I can arrange it for you. I know the chairman of the chemistry department down there." And so after I got out, took the train down to Princeton and met with the chairman of the chemistry department, and he explained as much as he could about what the job entailed, but it was just doing some simple analytical chemistry, which I had been trained for at the GE in Williams to do. Yet they had 9 PhD chemists working with me in this project. They hired me for the thing. I don't know if you recall, but they sent FBI and Secret Service to interview everybody that I ever known, because it was a top
And you
secret.
passed clearance even with Uncle Pete and Grandpa's your brothers?
I think Pop's probably sent them out of town for a while. But yeah, I got the job, and I think I was about 18 or 19 at the time. And actually, we're working on uranium, and we didn't know what we were working on. The Manhattan Project, which it turned out to be, the atom bomb.
Atom bomb.
They don't know.
The atom bomb project.
Jess, do you know what that was, honey?
Was so fragmented that we speculated on what we were working on in the lab there, and we thought it might be some kind of a weapon that we could not even conceive of, or that we knew that uranium had radioactive properties, and it might be used as a source of power, But how, we couldn't fathom. That was left up to the physicists. As it turns out, we were right on both counts, but in the reverse order, because we figured it was the power source that we were working on rather than the weapon. Ultimately, it was used for both purposes, but the weapon came first. And I didn't know what we were working on until the bomb actually dropped. And by that time, I was in the Navy. So I was in the Navy during World War II. But I could have sat out the war there at Princeton because of the nature of my work. But after a couple of years, I felt very uneasy about not being in the service because all my peers, all my buddies were in the service. And I felt guilty about not being there. So I went to Dr. Furman, the head of the department, and told him that I really felt I needed to be in the service and go ahead and be drafted. He said, well, if you apply for the draft, you're going to go in the Army, and what the Army is going to do is send you through basic training and send you right back here. Because the Manhattan Project was under the Army Corps of Engineers, and it was that they would find out what I'd been doing. I'd be there at a private's pay instead of the civilian pay that I was getting then. So I said, your only chance of getting the service is to go into another branch. So I volunteered for the Navy and got into the Navy. I wanted to go overseas, but they took one look at my record with all the secrets that I had, and they said, no, you cannot go overseas. So I got stuck. So I got stuck in the United States, and I did duty on Long Island and Miami Beach and Palm Beach and Bethesda, Maryland, and so on.
How long did you have to be sworn to secrecy?
Even after the bomb was dropped, the headlines, as soon as I read the headlines,
you knew?
That's what I was working on. And then shortly after that, I got a letter from the War Department and a certificate signed by Henry Stimson, who was Secretary of War then, now called Secretary of Defense, thanking all of us, all 150,000 of us, for our efforts in developing the atom bomb, and warning us that we were still under absolute total secrecy. That's never been lifted, but unbeknownst to us, the Russians knew all about it already.
Wow.
But I was in the Navy for 2 years. I remember stationed on Long Island, we would get free tickets to Broadway plays, you know. You'd go into New York City. Were any of you in New York City during World War II?
Yes.
Absolutely dark at night. Can you imagine Broadway, Times Square, with not a single light showing? Absolute, total darkness. The traffic lights, you know, they only have red and green. The New York City traffic lights, or they used to, well, had just a little cross showing of the green and the red, and the cars could have just a thin band of light on their headlights. But you'd be walking around absolutely totally safe.
I know, that's
in New York City.
Is that one of the biggest changes, is how unsafe it is?
Darkness, yeah, oh yeah.
Growing up, we never felt
But New York City was totally blacked out during the war because German submarines were right off the coast and
wow.
constantly patrolling the U-boats.
We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the atomic bomb this month.
Yes.
August.
Yes, and as a matter of fact, I was in Times Square on VJ Day.
Oh, wow.
Explain that for the kids.
Yeah, that was, VE Day was in June. That's when the war in Europe came to an end. And VJ Day was the end of the war with Japan, which was in August, just in a few days.
Tell them about how important your job was one time in
Who was president then?
Roosevelt was president until April of that year.
Of 1945.
When Truman took over, and Truman made the decision to drop the bomb.
Wow.
This is another story I'll tell you aside from this, because it's a long drawn-out story, but I had a chance to visit with President Truman for about 2 hours in the airline terminal in Kansas City between flights. This was after he left the presidency. And we just sat there for a couple of hours and talked, because he happened to be a member of my fraternity as well, so we had a lot in common. But I asked him, I told him that I had worked on the atomic bomb and knew that it was his decision to drop it, and asked if he'd ever had any regrets about that decision. He said, absolutely none. To my dying day, I will never regret it because it saved a million lives. There's some controversy about that now, as there always will be. But he said no, he never had any regrets. But spending 2 hours with President Truman on a bench like this, just the two of us, is really one of the highlights of my life.
And he was a Democrat too, George.
Yes,
A very good Democrat, wasn't he, Peter?
and I actually didn't appreciate him until long
Later.
after
I don't
his
think that-
presidency.
That's true
Yeah.
about Truman. I don't think
Yeah.
we did when he was president. We didn't appreciate him, what he did until after, you know.
Those are
then
big
after
shoes
the-
to fill.
yeah.
Well, speaking of presidents, who was president when you were, just born and growing up, that you remember?
I remember Herbert Hoover just a little bit,
Yeah.
really, being talked about, but not really. But the first president I ever voted for, I had was Roosevelt. Roosevelt.
Of course, Pops was a great Democrat.
Yeah.
So we used to
All the way.
hear politics a
Politics
lot,
was
at
big.
home with my father and stuff, and Bill. They would
Bill and
The two of them,
my
my
father
father,
were
Bill
great.
was-
stay up all night just talking politics.
What was one of your first TV shows that you guys watched that you can remember?
On Sunday night,
Milton Berle.
The first ones I ever watched was Uncle Peter's house, because Uncle Peter was the first one in a family to have a television set.
No, Mickey.
oh, Mickey.
Yeah. First one.
No, Pitney in.
I thought Stephen Dot had.
I know.
We always came over,
I remember.
Keen and Johnny would come down from Vermont and everything else. We'd all go over to Peter's house.
And we used to watch wrestling.
Oh, yeah, we used to go up to your mother and father's house to watch the wrestling.
We went to Peter's.
Wrestling, oh yeah, we lived just
George, how
down
much did TVs
down the
cost?
street from
George, how much did
them.
TVs cost?
Oh, probably $1,000. The set was about the size of that cabinet, but the tube was
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
4 or 5 inches.
And it was
And
like
then-
black and white.
Yes,
Yes,
black
black
and
and white.
And then you could buy this magnifying glass
That you put in front of it.
that extended
Make a
it
bigger
about
picture.
an inch.
Yeah, yeah.
But the set was huge, with a little screen, and everybody would gather. People would.
Okay, go ahead, Steve. Last question of the night, bud.
Okay, when I was in school, we used to sit on mats, and when we had to ask questions, we had to raise our hands.
Oh, you did? So what do you want to know? If they had to sit on mats when they were in school?
We had to raise hands when we went to school to ask questions.
We had to
Is that
raise
what you want to
the
know?
hand.
That was
Yeah,
his
we
We
had
did the
to
same
raise the
thing.
hand.
Good question.
Good
We had to
question,
raise-
Steve.
Yeah,
We had to
we
raise
used to
hands.
have to raise our hands.
Did you sit on mats?
Yes, no.
No, we sat on stools.
We had-
It was attached to the
But they were
desk.
hard.
What if you spoke out without raising your hand?
What?
What if you spoke out without
Oh,
raising
you
your
would
hand?
never speak out without,
They had respect, Jess.
That's right. The teacher,
When you come back, your cheek was red.
What was that, Uncle Pete?
Well, I'll tell you, see,
He was an officer.
we had a school teacher by the name of Mrs. Collins.
She lived up the lake.
If you talked out of turn, or you were not paying any attention, she'd sneak up and back you. She'd get you right here like this. That was it.
Okay, ending on that note for now. Uncle George, thank you so much for everything you contributed. Great to see you. Aunt Nell, great to see you too. Aunt Hun, I'm zooming in. Uncle Peter, the spas.
Spies is right.
It was like getting 2 for 1. It was like both you and Gramp were here. And Aunt Mare, so good to see you too. And I'll turn to the crowd to end this. The audience.
Let's hear it for the you guys were great. It's gonna be a great
They
day.
have to, it's so easy to
Over here.
talk
I know.
about because everything happened, and we can go on and we could start with your wife and your.
Well, we stopped right there. That'll be the second book George is gonna write. He's gonna write the first
We
one.
gotta get the next generation in.
Hi, Bud.
He's got a good start though, I think,
But
George.
don't forget, we were there when they were born.
Yep.
I remember when Stephanie was born.